Hello and welcome to this edition of the education webinars that the Hindu conducts every Saturday. Today is April 19th, and today we have a very, very interesting topic which we haven't quite addressed. We've done many webinars on AI, how it is being applied, how it is being learned, and so on, the use of AI. But there's always been this looming question. AI can obviously do things that many of us are doing right now. So why won't AI take away our jobs? It's a reality of the situation, and as some of the panelists have said, it's happening very rapidly. So it is very likely that we are seeing job losses, and we will see job losses. This is the bitter truth about AI. AI is certainly opening up all kinds of opportunities in terms of productivity, in terms of our own lifestyle, our own future, how humans live their life. The bitter truth is it is leading to job losses. It will lead to job losses. In what field, how much? To discuss all that, we have a very, very distinguished set of panelists who are there with us. We have Kalyan Mangalapalli. He's a consultant. He's got a very interesting background. He served many years at GE, and he helped us set up a. He'll talk more about this. His work. He has direct experience on AI, and he's advised the government on AI deployment and so on. And we have Aloysius George, who's also on the cutting edge of the application of AI. He's a tech. So we have basically two hardcore techies, and also Kalyan too, who also has a very interesting bird's eye view of what's happening in tech as well as in many other sectors. And Siddharth Sivasailam, he is the head of product strategy, corporate incubation at the TCS, Tata Consultancy Services. So he's right there in the thick of action, if we can say that. So I mean, we can, as introductory remarks, I was actually sharing this with the panelists just before we started, that when I was editing as an article and then I went to ChatGPT to ask some question, a very technical thing about SEO and stuff. And even as I was asking that question, ChatGPT gave a list of, it was commenting on how the article was written, of course, it said nice things, but it critiqued the article, it sort of analyzed the article, and it also gave ideas for follow ups. So it appeared to me that it certainly did a better job of editing the article than I did. It had its observations on the article was very, they were quite nuanced, and the kind of follow-ups it was suggesting were certainly worth following up. I shared them with the writer and said, here are certain follow-ups that you could do that ChatGPT is suggesting, and I think they are valid. So why are we still in the business? It's a question that I ask myself. Obviously, media and related fields like writing, document making presentation, especially in the lower end of the creativity spectrum, certainly AI can do it much better. So I am expecting job losses in that sector happening right now. But the story is much deeper, much more interesting, very, very important, significant to how we lead our lives. So I start with Kalyan Mangalapalli. He's the second Kalyan on this panel. He's to tell us, give us a bird's eye view. What we hear often is that it's only a question of retraining, reskilling, and maybe AI can lead us to a greater, more more intelligent work by humans, and the rest of the stuff AI can do. But are we being complacent? Are we not seeing the 800-pound gorilla in the room? Tell us, Kalyan.
Yeah, thanks, Kalyan, and thanks to the Hindu for bringing us here. I want to start with laying the context of this discussion, right, as to why this discussion is important. If you look at India, India is today maybe about a $3.5 trillion economy. A digital economy is itself about 11 odd percent of that. And when I say digital economy, you have the larger, movements in manufacturing, supply chain. You have the Zomatos of the world, you have the Jetcooks of the world. Of course, you have our own IT services and BPO industry. So if you look at the total universe of jobs in India, we have about 650 odd million jobs, out of which the tech sector employs about, let's say, $5.5 million jobs. The number of job displacement might be minimal today, but I think we have to watch them. These are like ripples. And I believe as we digitize further, because we have to improve our labor productivity from about $10 per hour to maybe a country like Malaysia, which is about, let's say, $40-50 per hour. I think that's more of a need for India to move up the curve in terms of labor productivity. We can't be complacent there. And as we do so, we have to get more technology in. So whether you talk of digitization as a bare minimum and then automation or AI, I think this is something that the country needs. And indeed, by 2030, we are supposed to go to about 20% of the digital economy will be about 20%. But as we do so, the pace of change is very, very high when it comes to technologies like AI. I'm sure there will be jobs that will be displaced, but I think there are many more that are coming in. For example, there are lots of jobs being created by the global capability centers of the multinationals that are there in the country. Again, they're more focused on AI, whereas there might be displacement on some of the lower end of the work, right? So overall, what I would say is this is a necessity. I don't think as a country, as a business, you can stop, without without getting any AI implemented. But having said that, I think we have to watch the situation very carefully and then go into the root cause and see, how can we navigate some of this crisis. Kalyan?
Thanks for that. I was wondering if any of us are not getting hired, if you're out of job, if you're not getting hired, is it because of AI? Can they suspect that AI is preventing them from getting rehired? Is that a legitimate fear? Is that happening? I invite Siddharth to tell us, especially the tech sector, where there's always a churn. People go in and out of companies and they find jobs. Now, if they're not getting hired, can they suspect AI? Is that what's happening?
No, I really wouldn't agree so, Mr. Kalyan Raman. Especially in the tech sector, maybe not right now. My answer could be different a few years from now. We have been seeing a lot of rapid advancements, right, in the tech sector, especially with AI over the, I'll say, past decade and a half. And I've also seen some of these advancements being part of startups and companies, right? We've been building AI solutions, mainly for a lot of businesses, right? None of these solutions at this point of time have caused massive displacement. Yes, we have seen scenarios where there's been some displacement that has happened. I'm going to classify them into probably 3 or 4 phases, right? There was phase 1, where all these repetitive jobs, repetitive tasks, which could easily be automated, got replaced, right? So that's probably phase 1. And we see quite a bit of that happening, I'll say, as early as 15 years ago, right? We then had the next phase where some of these systems were able to be a bit more context aware, retain some information, right? That probably led to a bit more displacement. But over the last few years, we are seeing a phase where they can reason, AI systems can reason, right? They can be creative. There's still a bit of a journey to go for us to get to a state where people in the tech sector are going to be completely replaced, even though we keep hearing a lot of numbers thrown about developers, testers really going out of jobs. But I still feel it's going to take some more time for this to happen.
I suppose that was some comfort, but it could change very quickly, won't you say that? Okay, all right. Okay. Thanks, Siddharth. We'll come back to you. Aloysius, tell us more. How do you see it? You had a different take on it. Which sectors do you think are really at risk right now, right away, and which ones maybe perhaps more later they need to be concerned?
Thanks for the nice intro, Kalyan. So let me share my screen to quickly show some kind of a visual representation of how certain sectors are getting affected. So this is basically representing what kind of areas, what kind of jobs is AI slowly getting its claws into. So it's a range of tasks in supernatural natural instructions benchmark. It was done in 2022, and mind me, in 2 years, a lot has changed in terms of AI getting bigger around these areas. But we can see that areas like translation, question answering, program execution, text categorization. So these are areas where AI is able to do a pretty good job, sentiment analysis and things like that in terms of natural language programming. And there are certain other places towards the periphery where it has not really got better at. But the thing is, all these bubbles are getting bigger by the day as new models are getting released, as new workflows around agents are getting released. All these are getting bigger and bigger. And I was going through this interesting table which says how much is each of these kind of jobs exposed to AI. That is, AI can get to learn what you're doing, and AI is already getting to understand what you're doing. So if we look at this, so this alpha refers to exposure to AI models directly. So these jobs are directly exposed to AI models. So interpreters and translators, 76.5% exposure. And these are people who are getting exposed to AI powered software, might not be directly AI models. You can see these jobs have 100% exposure to AI, which means AI can fully learn what these people are doing. And interestingly enough, there was a discussion where someone was asking, like, is there any job where you're not exposed to AI? Then the answer was like, yeah, you should be a plumber or something like that, where there is not much of digital data around your skill set that AI cannot learn. So wherever there is a digital data about what you're doing and what kind of skill sets are required, AI is slowly learning what we're doing. And there are 15 occupations which are classified as fully exposed to AI. And when it comes to statistics to see, okay, how big is the effect going to be, from some of the leading studies, it looks like around 2030, there's going to be a large shift in the kind of jobs. But there is an interesting aspect here. If you see, 85 million jobs may be displaced by 2025, whilst 97 million new roles may emerge. So that's an interesting aspect. So there are going to be new kinds of roles which are going to be emerged, probably roles which never existed, probably roles which are augmented roles, roles which augment AI into the pre-existing skill set. So that's a good thing to happen. Like, we're just going to have a different set of roles. So that's basically my take on AI. So this is something which is going to happen pretty quickly, which is very similar to the previous revolutions we had. Basically, like in the start of the 20th century, we had electricity, which replaced a lot of steam-powered factory workers. But it happened over a long time. Like it gave decades to adjust. And when computers came in the mid 20th, it did not give that much time. It still gave some amount of time for people to get used to the digitization process. But with AI, it's almost like a gold rush. Like every company wants to have AI mentioned in their report, because they don't want to lose out on their stock prices going up. Like so, almost everybody is stating you're going to do something about AI. So it's almost like a gold rush. So it doesn't give a lot of time for people to adjust, which means we need to adapt pretty quickly to the changes and the capabilities that it's going to bring in.
What percentage you showed? 100%, and there was 85. So if you look at service jobs, what percentage were these jobs? What percentage of the service jobs were these jobs?
So these jobs, no, the percentage is what percentage of the skills that these people are having is learnable by AI.
Right.
So yeah, so tax preparers, so whatever skill set they have, 100% of that skill set is learnable by AI, which means their skill is fully exposed. Like it can learn as time passes. So that's basically what it says. So learnability, how much can AI learn? Which means at some point of time it's going to catch up, and it will try and kind of completely do what you're doing.
So Kalyan, maybe I can have a stab at it. I looked at some numbers in India. For example, India has close to about 14 odd million jobs in the whole digital economy, which means everything that you're seeing, anything digital in BFSI, from the UPIs of the world, people in phone pays, people in, let's say, the Zomatos of the world, and so on and so forth, right? All these marketplaces, and of course the tech sector put together. Out of the 14 million in the tech sector, like the ITS companies and BPMs, you have close to about 5.5 million jobs there. And what I see is the displacement that is being at least spoken about, the ripples that I spoke about, I think they are today hardly a percentage or maybe less than 1% of this number, right? So as a percentage, they might be very small today, but as the space quickens and the rehiring, let's say, doesn't happen at scale, I think this number will then keep going up. And whatever affects the tech economy will also affect the entire services industry, your hospitality, real estate, construction, and so on and so forth, right? And hence, I think these ripples need to be watched very carefully. So today it's just about 0.5 to 1%, but I believe in the next 4 to 5 years it will be far higher. Kalyan.
Okay. Now, relatively, would you say tech is more immune to AI, unlike, say, some of writing or mathematicians' accounts? Sid, what is your take? Is it?
It's not, right? But I think it adapts a bit faster. And also, there are plenty of opportunities for people in tech to try to look at. Let's take, for example, some of the basic areas where they feel tech is going to be impacted, right, by AI. One is obviously the fact that you don't need to learn how to program anymore. You don't need developers in your team. AI can do the programming for you. To some extent, that is correct, right? Like George was mentioning, right? For example, tax preparators. Over time, AI is going to learn how to do that job better and better and better. Right now, we are at a state where it probably has 70 to 80% efficiency. So it could probably still learn how to code, and it can give you the code, right? But what we are seeing, and what most companies are seeing, is that there's no way you can just completely just use AI just to build a software system, right? You definitely need human intervention. It can write the code, but building a product, building a software, it's just not about writing code, right? There's many more aspects to it as well. So at this point of time, yes, there are efficiency being brought in. There are a lot of these co-pilots. You must have heard of GitHub Copilot, which is very widely being used by developers specifically to help them, right? So they don't need to think about ideas. It's going to give them an idea. They can start with that. It gives them a you no longer have to start off by staring at a blank page, right? You already have something, and you can just build upon that, right? That's just for developers, right? It's also being used, for example, just to generate ideas, to do testing. I'm in product management, and there are tools out there which are pretty good. And even coming up with, say, user prototypes, right? So I don't need to really go and have a designer who's going to come up with the prototype of how exactly a page is going to look, how a product is going to look, how the transitions are going to happen. It can go and create that for me, right? And I've been using something similar, I'll say, for the past year or so, right? But it's nowhere close to a state where I can just pick it up and start doing right away, right? So at this point of time, yes, there are efficiencies being brought in. I won't say jobs are completely immune, but to some extent they are, simply because this is also being seen as an accelerator, right? So I can use these tools, I can accelerate the time I take to go and build a software system, which means I can build more and more software systems. I can make them better. I can work on optimizing them. So it's being seen more as something that's going to accelerate and enhance the work you do, rather than something which is going to be a threat to you at this point of time. But a few years from now, once it catches up, once it becomes more and more perfect, once it becomes more and more creative, things could change. Kalyan, back to you.
Okay, no, I think Kalyan made this point that we need to improve our labor productivity. He was comparing India's labor productivity with Malaysia. So he was saying AI could be a tool to improve labor productivity. I think it seems like, at least for now, companies are deploying. We have seen several webinars in which we did learn, some of us, I mean, as laypersons, we were surprised to learn that AI is being deployed quite extensively. For instance, in the in the hospital, in the healthcare sector, or in insurance. So companies are already doing it, or they're already deploying it. But I don't think they're letting go of people yet. I think AI is just a tool. Just as in the media, journalists go and probably check out, use AI to perhaps enhance the story or make it perfect grammar, all that stuff. But it's still, I don't think people are yet thinking of letting go of people, or not hiring and just relying on AI. Perhaps we haven't yet. Yeah,
No,
go ahead.
I just want to add, and I'll take one of the industries you mentioned, Mr. Kalyan,
Okay.
right? And let's take insurance. Now, there's a very simple use case of AI in insurance, right? I'll take two simple use cases, right? One use case is just on the customer service part area, where I want to either file a claim or I want to understand a bit about the policy that I've just got. I have basic questions about it. Maybe I just want the policy document, right? AI is being used, and more of virtual assistants, smart assistants, right? Chatbots. They've already been deployed, I'll say, at least for the last 7-8 years by insurance companies across the world, right? Where I no longer have to make a phone call. I can just go to their website, go and give them my phone number. It picks up my insurance copy and sends it back to me, right? Or I can file a claim conversationally, right? I can go and get information about my claim, what the status of my claim is. I don't need to go to an office. I don't need to make a phone call, right? So these are solutions that are in place. In fact, I've been involved in building some of these solutions, right? One of the things I've seen is bringing the geography and the area in which these solutions have been deployed, right? And North America and Europe and if you take Asia, I don't displacement really didn't happen in the insurance companies where these solutions were deployed, at least in India, right? I'll say even in Asia. But displacement did happen in many countries in, say, Western Europe or North America, where they were deploying these solutions. They felt instead of having 20 people, now they can have 17 people, right? So a lot of the queries could just go to the chat bot, and so they really don't need to staff more. And in fact, they're reducing number even more as people get more and more comfortable in interacting with these AI-based assistants. The number is dwindling, right? So the displacement also depends a bit on which part of the world these AI solutions are being deployed, right? And I'll take one more example again with the insurance industry, and more specifically car insurance, right? One of the solutions we deployed was using computer vision, right, in order to try to see the extent of damage on your car and what would potentially be the total claim amount, or how much you can claim. Is going to be a simple claim, or do you actually need somebody to come in? Previously, you needed an assessor to come in and then examine your car. It could take a couple of days, 3 days, for them to actually get the time to come and assess your car and say, you know what, the accident damage is pretty significant, and so this is going to be your claim amount that we can actually honor, right? But today, all I need to do in case my car gets in an accident is take a picture, upload it, and AI will automatically assess. It has been trained on images of car accidents, dents, all kinds of things that could happen, and it automatically tells me, hey, what, this is the extent to which you're being covered, and we'll be able to honor the claim, right? Now, what this brings in is, this scenario definitely did not bring in replacement, right? Because what happened was, now there was an enhanced customer experience, because I was able to get a response to my claim much sooner, much faster. And the humans only had to come in for very significant accidents, and they really had to assess the car as such. So two examples: one, displacement did happen with AI, or at least is happening based on geography. Second example, no displacement happened. In fact, it's only led to enhanced customer experience.
So why do we need assessors, as many assessors as before a year back? If AI can do much of the initial or much of the assessment, why do we need as many assessors? Why aren't they being let go, or are they being let go?
No, they're not. Well, like I said, it obviously depends on the actual geography, but to a large extent, assessors were always at a shortfall, right? In the sense, no company had enough number of assessors to send somebody to your doorstep within 1 hour, right? It was also a skill that people had to be trained in. It is a skill that people had to grow into. So there was always a shortfall in terms of number of assessors available in order to send somebody to your house immediately, right? So that was one of the reasons. So now what has happened is the assessors are only being brought in for the most complex kind of scenarios and accidents, right? Over time, right, once these AI systems are also able to do that work, right, they may not be able to do it perfectly. They may still need a human in the loop. But over time, there could be a potential for assessors also being reduced, the number of assessors that need to be reduced.
Okay, now I think we can take a step back and see. Meanwhile, questions are coming. The people are firing away. That's good. Keep asking questions. We will get them answered. Most of them. The best 3 questions will get free access to the Hindu online. That's a treasure trove of information. It's a bit of a cliche, but it's true. There's much that's online, the archives. You get access to all that the Hindu has been offering over over time. So you will get a prize. The best three questions, the panelists will decide which are the ones, and you will get an email later on giving you access. So please do ask, keep firing away, keep posting those questions in the comment section. But meanwhile, I thought we'll take a step back and ask each of the panelists. Obviously AI is the thing is that what's scary is that it's getting better. Like it's like the movie Jurassic Park, when they've recreated the dinosaurs, and they start learning to break the locks and tamper with them and trying to go free. I mean, it's a bit of a danger like that, right? Okay, now AI is doing this. 3 years time or 2 years time, it could get more sophisticated. It could do a lot more things. What is current and what is coming in AI in terms of technology, in terms of products? I know Kalyan has been talking about agentic AI. What else is out there, or what else can we expect that would make AI even more fearsome, if I can use that word? Maybe we can start with you, Kalyan.
Yeah, as I mentioned, it's not just AI, it's also other emerging technologies that play along with it. I'll give you an example. Hyundai today is investing about $20 odd billion in US in setting up a completely robotic assisted, I would say, manufacturing plant in the US, right? And they're spending $20 billion. And these robots are state of the art. They have LLMs ported into them. They can understand the context in which they're living. They're mostly Boston Dynamic robots, which Hyundai is invested in. So I would say a combination of AI and other emerging technologies will definitely have an impact. And that's where a lot of, I would say, research is happening. Within AI, I think we have known about large language models. We have probably, heard about reinforcement learning, which is also, really adding to the field. Other than that, obviously, you will see other advances come in, including marketplaces is something that I wanted to touch on. I saw a question on that too. I think what we also need to understand is when a sector gets digitized, let's say, for example, if you take a company like Urban Company, when they digitize, let's say, the supply of services to homes, right? The moment it gets digitized, obviously there is a value capture there, and the moment you apply AI, there is a value capture there. It's not necessary that the value creation and value capture is done, is actually distributed equally amongst the participants, right? What I mean to say is, if the company gains a lot of, let's say, margins because of the digitization and because of deployment of AI, it might not necessarily accrue to the gig workers on the ground. And that was a question that somebody had asked on what the impact of AI in the unorganized sector is. I think it's going to be, I wouldn't say it's negative, but it's going to be a challenge to see how these market forces will impact, let's say, wages on the ground, right? While, it will help digitize, while it will help the end customer in terms of their whole customer experience, but will it have a equal impact? Will the value be distributed equally amongst the participants? Is still a question to be answered. So I would say, as I said, it's a mix of emerging technologies, not just AI, and that's where there is a lot of movement across industries. Kalyan.
Sid, can you weigh in? What is happening? What is happening in the AI domain in terms of AI product development itself?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll probably tell my top three, right? The first big advancement and probably rapid advancement we're going to see is the inclusion of languages other than English, right? The fact is, a lot of these AI technologies were built with keeping English in mind. Right? Your Chat GPT, obviously, when it started off, you could only talk in English to it. Over the next few years, we are going to see a lot of these AI systems becoming very, very good in other languages, right? Even today, you can converse with them, right? But what goes on beyond the scenes, it needs some improvement, right? But there is a lot of work going on, building models specific to languages. There's in fact an initiative called AI for Bharat by IIT Madras, right, which has done a phenomenal work, right? In fact, there, if you try to talk to their system in Tamil or Hindi, is much better than maybe talking to a Chat GPT or a Google Gemini, right? So we're going to, number one, I think we are going to see systems where people can just start conversing in their local language. The natural language understanding engine is going to be native to a language, right? It could be a Hindi or a Mandarin or a Tamil, right? I'll say that's going to be the biggest change we're going to see in the next few years, or advancement. The second thing that we're going to see is more context aware and the ability to include contextual or specific information while conversing with these systems, right? Today, I can go to a chat GPT and ask any question I want, right, which is openly available on the internet, and then it can answer. I can also connect it to my company's information using something called RAG, or retrieval augmented generation, and ask questions on it. It doesn't do very well when I try to mix and match, right? So it sometimes gets confused. If I ask, how old is Kalyan, it may not know if I'm referring to the not any person called Kalyan or the Kalyan who works in my company, right? So this is definitely going to improve. We are going to see more tools, more technology coming in, so that it's completely context aware. It knows what when I'm referring to a Kalyan, or if I'm referring to a city, in what context I'm asking it. It's going to get better and better as I converse with it. So now this is like a gold mine, right? So I can ask any question, say related to my personal expenses in one question, right? It's connected to all my systems. I can ask any question related to my team in my next question, and then I can just ask a generic question maybe over the IPL, right? So in this way, it can keep switching back and forth, and this is going to become better. The third area I would say, which is probably the most talked about area these days, is AI agents, right? We're going to see more and more agents, coming into the fold. They're going to do a much, much better job. If I want to do, say, research on a particular topic, or maybe I just want to build a new product, right? I hear that there's a VC who's going to fund products which are in, say, IoT, right? I can go and ask an agent. I don't need to go and do anything, right? I can go and ask an agent to go and do all the research, come up with 10 ideas, put together the business plan, and then come back with me after optimizing the business plan, looking at, say, pitch databases, and then come and give it to me. So, I really don't need to do anything. So agents could make a very big difference, not only in, say, for the end consumer, in the specific example I gave, but even on the business side, right? I think we're seeing more and more businesses trying to adopt agents in their business flows. And that's going to become more and more prevalent, right? There is a lot of imagination in terms of what all agents can do. Eventually they can, but it is going to take some time. But at least in the next 3-4 years, we're going to see more and more agents, and we're going to start interacting with agents in the coming years for sure. I'll say these are the top 3 areas where I feel there's going to be a lot that's going to happen.
Excellent. Thanks. Aloysius, George, if I can call you that,
Yeah.
what is your take?
So I would actually say 2. I would start off with agents, which Sid spoke about. So it's really interesting to see what agents can do, because earlier it was like you speak to an LLM, you get a result, and then you take the result and you go and do something. Let's say I just want to book flight tickets. So I do a bit of research to see where my flights are the cheapest, and then it tells me, okay, these are the cheapest. I'll have to go and book the tickets. Now what's coming up is like agents can do all of this on their own. You just need to say that I want to do this, and it can speak to system 1, get some results, use that, and identify, okay, there are system 2, 3, 4, who's the best person to ask the next question. Goes and asks to system 4, gets an answer, and then identifies who's the next person to ask the question. So they get into a thinking loop on their own to come out with better responses. So this would transform how businesses work, because like we have B2Bs where business to business, so you need to have a different kind of a product. If you're doing a B2B, your sales cycles and things change, and B2C, you need to come up with, again, a different kind of product. The customer is directly going to use it, and so it will also spawn, as we go forward, B2A kind of situations where you sell to agents. So B2A, basically business to agents. So you need to have a pluggable system as a business where other agents can reach out to you. So as a developer, we generally try and build things for the web. So if someone is going on to a laptop and opening Chrome and doing something, they should see something. We build for mobile. So mobile is a platform, web is a platform. So agent is going to be another kind of a interface that businesses have to be ready with. So other businesses are going to reach out to your agents. You should have somebody who can deliver that. So agents is definitely going big. The second aspect is about how jobs get a different kind of a requirement going forward. You're asking about like why are still some of them employed if some of their works are already getting done by AI, and will people lose their jobs because of this? So the answer from Sid was excellent, because we always don't have enough people to do more job. For instance, if you look at a small engineering team which has got 10 engineers, they always want to execute 20 projects, but they only end up executing 10 projects. So with AI, that 10 becomes 15. So they don't fire off those 10 engineers they have, they just come up with better productivity, unless they only want to do 10 and they already are overpowered to deliver those 10 projects. So most companies will look at delivering more with the given set of people, unless they come across a situation where they can see a grand decrease in their cost. So I was just working a simple prototype to see, let me have a first hand feel of agents and what kind of cost benefits they can give me. So I'm into this business where we generate questions, like reasoning questions and answers and explanations. So it generally costs around 400 to 600 rupees to generate one question with an explanation. So I try to build an agentic system where there is one agent which prepares a question, the other agent evaluates this question, and the third agent consumes evaluation and improves the question, and they go into a loop and finally come to a quality standard. The whole workflow, it costed me only around 15 to 16 rupees. So what costs me around 400 to 600 rupees is costing me 15 to 16 rupees. Now, if I'm into this business of generating this and selling off to people, it's a huge cost benefit for me. Like I can reduce the costs crazily, and that can actually result in a big bottom line for me. So those kind of businesses might actually think of like, why should I actually rely on this guy who will deliver me something at 600 rupees if I can get it done at 15 to 16 rupees. So those kind of jobs will take a severe hit, but many jobs will actually still stay, but people will have to augment themselves with extra skills as to how they can ride on AI and deliver better. Back to you, Kalyan.
Okay. So agent, as when we're on this topic, agentic AI agents, AI acting as agents, are they acting? Will they act on our behalf? Does that mean they have access to all our accounts, bank accounts, email
No, it
IDs?
depends. It depends on what scope we want the agent. So when we say agent, so it actually sounds a little more scary than what it is, because of a lot of Hollywood agents that we have seen. So agents are basically entities which can take some decisions. So let's say I've got. So generally, when people plan for a business, you can actually let AI take a role of, let's say, someone who's an expert in law, and you can set up another system which takes a role as someone who's an expert in marketing, and set up another system who's someone who's an expert in, let's say, some kind of a research in your field. And then you can have an orchestrator which discusses with these three and then comes up with a business plan, right? So you look at what kind of marketing plans you can go with. You can also have a financial advisor for you, right? So you are basically letting an AI system act as something, and they can discuss among themselves and then come up with something. So the scope defined here is very clear. I haven't supplied them with anything that they can act on my behalf, but there are systems coming up where you can give your credentials and put some kind of a limit, and they can go and act on your behalf. For instance, I was actually trying to move some of my resources from Amazon Web Services into something else which is much cheaper. So all they had to do is like open something like VS Code. There is this thing called Cursor, which a lot of developers are doing nowadays. I just had to tell it like, these are the different servers I have. You go there. These are my credentials. No, I don't want you to create any resources. These are my credentials. I only want you to analyze, identify how much I'm spending, go and look at the competitors and see how much I can save if I'm going to move my server somewhere else. And then I went off to have my coffee and come back. It has done all the research. It says, if you move to this is what is going to be your. So this is a place where you give certain credentials and put some kind of scope as to what it can do, what it cannot do. But there can be leaks around this as well. But slowly there are systems which are beginning to execute critical things on the behalf of human beings as well.
So the AI has a it's like the Edgar Hoover files, the FBI. He had files on practically everybody to snoop on them and blackmail them. But so the AI is going to have a profile of each of us and perhaps act on our behalf. I mean, that's really scary.
Yeah, when you get a chance, you should go to ChatGPT and ask, what do you know about me based on our
Right.
past, right?
You'd be
That's
surprised.
true.
If you
Yeah,
tried
that's
that, I haven't, but has anyone tried that? He perhaps knows us. I don't know. It's so scary.
yeah.
Okay, we'll go through the questions one by one. Arnav started with the question: how is AI affecting healthcare and education? We did a webinar on this. It was very interesting. There was a doctor at Jaslok Hospital who said that she is able to, the AI is able to scan the ultrasound reports of
Yeah.
pregnant women, and is better giving her better information on the diagnostics. She's able to predict the diseases that the embryo could develop in the third quarter. Just looking at the first quarter ultra is very fascinating. And it's already happened. And she was talking about robotic surgeries, how AI is helping, and so on. But if anyone has any specific information on that, on healthcare,
Yeah, I had one, which is, I think the keyword here is personalization. Whether it's education or healthcare, I think today you can personalize drugs even for the specific, person that you're speaking about. There is gene editing therapies, there is CRISPR. There's a lot of, I would say, technology even on the education side, where today teachers can actually personalize the homework they can give to a kid. There are startups in India which have again been acquired. So I think a lot of personalization is happening. That's where this whole field is going. And attached to that is obviously the wearables field in healthcare, which is actually, again, whether it's the Apple Watch that you have and whatnot, right? I think those are sectors which are getting the most traction, again, mostly in the B2C space that we spoke about, mostly in the consumer space. But I would say personalization is the main theme, and that's what is driving most of these techs towards, in these industries, specifically healthcare and education. Kalyan.
okay.
I'll probably add two specific use cases that I've seen, Mr. Kalyan, in healthcare. One is just a fact, and I'll say I've seen this more in North America, less so in India, right? Wherein the AI is able to understand any report, that is able to read the reports, right? Generally, you have somebody who's going to read the report and present their findings in, and that's what we get, when we go for an MRI scan or ultrasound scan, right? So the AI system has been trained on all these scans over like many years, right? Millions of scans. So it's able to at least give some judgment on, hey, this could be a problem, right? Which then gets picked up, and a doctor can choose to either go with that judgment or make a completely overrule that, right? But we are seeing that happening as well in terms of especially MRI scans, right? I think there's a specific use case where MRI scans are now, the first set of reports are being generated by AI, and then a doctor picks it up, right? The second use case, very interesting use case, is where doctors have a lot of medical history, right? They have a history of symptoms, they have a history of causes, they have a history of what was the disease of patients, right? And conversationally, they're able to even ask a question, right? How many patients had the symptom, right? What was their diagnosis? What was the treatment that was given? So they're able to, just like you go and ask ChatGPT any specific question, they have their own ChatGPTs, right? Which have just been trained with patient data, right? Of course, anonymized and stuff, and they're able to at least go and find out for these systems, for the age, what exactly was the prior diagnosis. And they use it, I mean, not directly, but they use it just to figure out what should be the next step. So two very interesting use cases, powerful use cases, where AI is really being, I will say, a co-pilot, right, for the doctors, and kind of helping them maybe do some of their work slightly faster.
Would we need fewer doctors then?
I would say we would have better doctors.
Okay.
Doctors
Yeah.
not having to go through. I think the key advantage with AI, it's amount to ingest enormous amount of data, go through it, and not forget a lot of things. So as human beings, we tend to forget now what kind of decision I take, let's say 2 years back, and the decision that I take now, the same set of data might be different. So with AI, you can ingest enormous amount of data, and it can rip through that data and then come back with something very quickly. That also opens up to personalization, and especially in medical field with so much of research, when you ingest that data, and its ability to read images and not miss out on small aspects that humans might generally miss out on, can act as rightly said, AI can act as a co-pilot to doctors. Like, you don't really have to go through enormous amount of data. Recently, I was sitting with one of my friend who is a dentist, and he wanted to read a book where he wants to know something. So basically, he wants to do a research, and the book is of 300 pages. So normally you will have to read, and you don't know where exactly that specific question that you're looking for is there in the book. You end up reading, and then somewhere maybe in page number 120, yes, this is what I wanted, might be there. But all that you have to do with AI is you get the PDF of that, send it off to AI, it'll rip through the entire content. You start asking questions. You just ask, this is what I wanted, is it given there? Exactly. It will give you the information. So when it comes to research, it's going to assist a lot with the amount of data it can consume and spit out exactly what you're looking for.
Okay, we have a little bit of a contrarian question. Kopalle Murali Krishna Murthy. Probably Kalyan can answer this. He's a bit of an
Yeah.
expert on retail chains and how they are doing. So they are deploying AI, but why aren't they giving better service? I mean, let's not blame these brands. I don't think it's fair to them. But he seems to think the application of or deployment of AI hasn't quite helped these uh, retailers serve their customers better. What do you think, Kalyan?
Again,
Murali?
I guess it has to do with without. I mean, this is a subjective question, right? We don't need to get to specifics of which company it is, but I think it depends on the maturity of the organization, right? How far are they in their digital journey? How much of their data is digitized? It's not just a CRM that they might have, but what are the data sources they have? Are they actually tracking the entire customer journey? So I think it depends a lot on that, and that's where I believe retail as an industry is still, I would say, lagging behind, let's say, the consumer internet industry. And I guess there is still a lot of, I would say, there's still a lot of walking to do, at least for the retail industry. And again, specific to companies, I think it depends on one company to the other, right? As to what their digital maturity is, and that will determine whether you can actually apply AI to the data that they have, right? The more data they have, the better quality of data they have, the better their models will be. So I guess it all depends on the maturity. I don't think we can answer we can answer on behalf of a company or the other. But I believe as an industry, they still have some walking to do. While the Walmarts of the world have done a lot in terms of applying AI, I think we still have a lot of opportunity, at least in India, with some of these chains.
Okay, Suyash Alva. He's a computer science student in his penultimate year. What skills should I develop, and what can I do to increase my chances at landing a good job? He wants to be a techie. I'll bounce this to Sid, and he wants to make himself irreplaceable. He wants to future-proof.
Yeah. So no, I think that's definitely a good intention, that if you want to become irreplaceable, right? So if you want to become irreplaceable, the answer is completely different, right? Gain great people skills, gain great industry business domain skills, and then you're going to be replaceable, right? Because skills, especially with say programming, like I can go and say, please learn how to code in Python, right? Which is probably is going to help you. Please learn how you can build an AI agent. Learn about Agentic AI, the frameworks around that. Try to learn some of the concepts around RAG, or how LLMs work. These are the 4 or 5 areas you should definitely try to be proficient in. But it's just not this, right? On top of this, you need to definitely understand how this is used in the business context. You need to understand how to deal with people. If you do all of this very well, especially the people skills and the business domain understanding, I'll say you will be replaceable, in the sense you'll grow, right? There'll always be a role waiting for you. So don't just look at what programming language do I need to learn, and what coding skills I need to develop. I think it's the entire package that you need to look at. So yeah, and I'm sure you're going to become replaceable. So good luck for that.
Okay,
Yeah, Kalyan, I just wanted to add there. I think the other thing that the student definitely needs to do is have a GitHub profile, have as many projects out there, and then the big tech companies will actually look at how many of them have been adopted by the larger open source industry, right? I think that's very important. While theory is good, you might understand concepts, you might score well in the exams, but the proof really lies in how many of open source projects have you created, how many people have actually downloaded your code, and how many of them have actually applied it on the ground, right? I think that's where being a practitioner first is going to be very, very important. And companies are expecting even students to be a practitioner first and then, bring the theory to the table. Without theory, you can't do this. But I think having a GitHub profile is a must. Having as many projects there is a must, today for the students out there. Kalyan.
Become useful on GitHub.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think one aspect, because I have been also hiring people for software developer roles, how requirements have changed of late is like generally people when they get into a role, they get into a role as a junior developer. But now what's happening is the benchmark for a junior developer itself has risen so much because a lot of lower level work can be done by AI. So unless you put your skill set way above what just delegating something to AI can do, it becomes difficult to get the job. So when I work on a daily basis, like if there is a bug that I need to solve in my application, all that I have to do is like give enough context to AI and then kickstart an agent, and it'll go and start troubleshooting itself. Now it's almost like I'm sitting with a junior developer who's doing that work. So and I can spin off 10 agents in parallel, and they're going to get something done. So as someone who's getting into the tech space, you need to see what more can you do than what people did, let's say 10 years back. 10 years back, if you can write a simple program, spit out some algorithms, you might still get recruited. But these requirements might change going forward. People will expect you to have much more than what a chat GPT can respond to. So I think the human value that Sid was saying is important. So all of us have certain unique propositions which you can bundle with. So you come up with a bundle with soft skills, with people skills, ability to manage, and judgment is one place where AI lacks a lot. So you come up with good judgment as to when you will take certain calls, when you will not go for it, when you will optimize slightly bad code because you need to ship something out on time and then you'll come back and correct it. So these are kind of judgments that AI will not be able to take. So that's where your bundle will sell in the AI world.
Okay, Sri Lakshmi has a question. Do benefits of AI reach all sectors of a society? Will this create a economic, any other kind of bias in society? Bias, and also one of the panelists said, if you don't want AI to impact you, become a plumber. but in terms of impact of AI, are they going to be different for different sectors?
I think that's a fantastic question, right? And I think it's also a broader question that we need to look at. I think one of the greatest things about some of the recent technologies that have come out is it's been democratic, right?
Yeah, I think we've lost.
Is it off?
Yeah, I think let him come back. But I was alluding to that question when I made my remark earlier, Kalyan. See, what's happening is, of course, tech, the use cases are well known. It's about improving productivity. But if you look at the non-tech sector, like a sector like manufacturing, you would think about, what is AI doing there, right? So it all starts with digitization. You have today platforms like Jetwork, where I, as a supply chain professional sitting in it's a brick and mortar company, they have essentially, whether it's forging, machining, or whatever operation, they have created a marketplace. So often what does happen is when marketplaces come in, like Ubers of the world on the consumer side or Jetwork on the manufacturing side, it's not necessary that whatever value is captured by the platforms, it's actually accrued to the participant, which is, the gig worker, or maybe, let's say, the supplier on the platform, right? So that, I think, varies from businesses to businesses and from, let's say, industries to industries. So I don't think, you can look for an equitable distribution there while the stakeholders would want that. I think that's where market forces have a role to play, and I don't think we can really answer that. But traditionally, what we have seen is there have been studies out there which say that, it doesn't really accrue in a proportionate manner, right? Most of the value capture is actually kept by the businesses, while people are participating, they might not gain the entire value that's being created there. So I think that challenge will still remain, and the challenge of equity and equality will still, be in a question that everybody has to answer.
Okay, this was a question to Sid. He's back.
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah. So now,
Yeah,
like
go
I was
ahead.
saying, I do think it's a great question. It's a broader question. Like Kalyan said, there will be areas where the equity may not exist as such, right? But one of the things we are seeing is it is being used, right? I think there are two parts of the question. Is it accessible? Is it can somebody from all parts of the society access it? And the other part is how is it going to benefit them, right? One of the things that AI has done, there are a lot of projects around this, right, where it's trying to see if it could be used, say, for poverty alleviation, right? Can we find out what parts of the country are really suffering, right? Can we use some models which develop that? Can we get help out to them faster, right? So, say for example, a natural disaster happens, right? Can we, AI is being used to figure out where they need to really go and help out, right? So there are a lot of these specific use cases where AI is being used, where it's being put to good use, right? Where it's reaching all parts of sectors of the society, people who probably are seeing benefits out of it, right? We're also seeing benefits for, say, for people who probably have some special needs, right? Today, using voice, right? In fact, it's a project that Google had called Project Euphoria, right? Where what they did was they tried to train an AI system with speech by people with multiple sclerosis, right? People who really had like slurred speech, and using that system, they were now able to offer services, right? Using Alexa, wherein somebody who just wants to say, I want the TV to be on, I want the channel to be changed. They were dependent on a human being to do that. But now today they don't need that, right? Alexa is able to understand, right? And is able to go and change it. So there are various parts of the society, various types of people who are benefiting from AI, right? And from technology overall, which was not happening before, right? So in that way, I think there's a lot of benefits that people are getting. Their access to some of these systems could be limited, right? Based on where they are and what role they play.
Okay. Moving on. So there is this question, Ashwini Kumar Sahu. We did go over it a little bit, but he's asked, it's a specific question to Sid. In this changing landscape of AI, what skills will be in demand for IT professionals, say in the coming decade, that people should start learning from now so that they'll be in demand, especially in fields like data science analytics? What will be a plus to learn now?
Yeah, I think we covered most aspects of this in the previous question, right? So the only thing I'm going to say, especially since he's talking about data science and analytics, I think you really need to really learn how to love data. You need to learn how to manipulate data. You need to learn how to play around with data. But more importantly, going back to my previous statement, you really need to have the business context, right? Because being a data scientist is really not about writing code, right? It's also about using your analytical skills, understanding the business and how that relates to what you have in front of you. So developing that skill on top of Python skills will definitely help for you to stay ahead of the curve. That's what I would say, Ashwini.
Okay. Anyone else? George?
So I would say the same. Like you need to see how you can, as you pointed out to this analogy of Jurassic Park. You need to see how you can ride on the dinosaur rather than getting chased by the dinosaur. So you need to see in which way can I sit on it, right? So how can I become more productive? How can I make sure that my research or finding solutions is much quicker than not using AI? So start using it to deliver things better, even if you are not exactly into developing models. If you're looking into data science, yes, one is to have the skill sets which a lot of people are tending to have nowadays. The other one is to put that layer of your speciality, your judgment, and your ability to take a call when not everybody would take the call the same way. I think that's what will be the icing on the cake, to say what you bring in on the top of what all that being already delivered by AI.
Okay, Jabadurai Selvaraj, he has a question. We did deal with this. You can tell ChatGPT to act as someone and perform specific tasks. So in the future, will people stop using their own brains for thinking or become less important in an AI-driven world? Are we important today? Okay, go ahead.
I think humans, right? I think we have that, I don't know, urge and desire to compete. If you really ask me, the impulse is to compete, right? You can see that when we play sports, for example. So even though there's a lot of talk about how these are going to make humans absolutely not required for anything, I don't think that's going to happen. We need to learn how to use these tools, and we need to continue to compete. We need to look at this more as an acceleration medium, and that'll be my submission, right? I don't think we're going to see that. There was a movie which came, many years ago. I think it was Wall-E, where it had a completely different view of what humans would be doing in the future, right? Because Wall-E would be doing all the work. I don't think they're going to really go into that kind of a future. I really hope not. Is what I would say.
Okay,
Kalyan,
we have
I
a
do want,
question. Yes,
I
yes,
do
go
want
ahead.
to add there, while the question is not specific to that, but today there is brain-computer interface research, right? Projects like Neuralink that Tesla does, I mean that Elon Musk has, and others, they are really looking at a place where I'll have a device on my head, you will have one, and we might not even use language to communicate, right? So I think this the whole subject of AI and some of these emerging technologies is about what is really the utility of a human, right? And that's where I guess the overall thinking, at least of the tech industry and some of the doyens of the industry, is that let's solve for larger problems. Let's solve for problems that really need our attention, and let's leave the rest of it, including maybe language, to technology, right? I know it's still in its infancy, but EEG or electroencephalogram, I mean, some of these like biomedical technologies, as I said, some of these even devices, BCI, I think they are all they are getting a lot of traction, right? So the question is not about will we stop thinking. I think we'll use our thinking for solving better problems uh, like going to the Mars or finding a better cure for cancer. I think that's really where the human brain needs to be focused. Well, the rest of it, things that we thought was important, including conversing, I think at least the tech industry believes it can be left to tech. It's a contrarian view, but I think we'll have to see how it evolves. But there is definitely some tech out there that kind of points to that. Kalyan.
Okay. And the next question is again relevant to Kalyan. We did discuss about government, and the last economic survey did mention AI. I think
Yeah.
it had a whole chapter on AI and all that. But how can governments and businesses effectively balance with the need to integration of AI with the need to preserve employment opportunities and support workers displaced by automation? Do the long-term benefits of AI-driven innovation outweigh the immediate economic and social challenges caused by job losses? I mean, these are policy questions. Has the government really gotten around to this at all? I mean,
I
it's
guess,
one thing to ask businesses to be more
yeah.
benign and
Yeah.
uh,
I think there are two steps, right? One is acknowledgement. I guess the acknowledgement is there. The economic survey does refer to a lot of the data that we have spoken about. There is clear acknowledgement that this is a disruption that we have to deal with. And when it comes to skilling missions, I guess you must have seen the Prime Minister announcing a new mission where you have, even ITI students getting skilled in AI, right? So AI for all is something which is not just a buzzword. I think there are clear programs. However, while that is said and done, we still have to really focus on creating cohorts. So to me, I think it's very important that if you're a state, if you're a country, if you're a district, I think you'll have to create cohorts of, let's say, people who are good at robotics and AI, right? And then look at the industry demand and then try and see if we can get them employed. I think that's really uh, the action item that we really should be focusing on. While there's a lot that I think the government and the rest of the ecosystem is doing, it really needs to be seen, as to whether we see the globe as our arena or we just focused on India. Because globally, what I read was there are about 1.5 million to 2 million tech jobs which are going to be created every year, right? Most of it will be AI focused. So I think our job of the government and some of the policymakers is also to see that our agreements with some of is also to have mobility, in as a part of this whole conversation, where we are not impacting the mobility of, let's say, a professional who's here in India from going to Germany or, let's say, elsewhere, right? I think those are two areas where I think we could have a lot more focus, while I think there is acknowledgement of the problem generally by the ecosystem.
okay. Will bounce this question to others as well. What do you expect what do you want as people who are in the tech industry and perhaps recruiting and seeing the talent, seeing the application deployment of AI? What do you think the government should be doing? to face this challenge, to benefit, to reskill, upskill? George, do you want to go?
Yeah. So I would say there has been more exposure to AI even at an earlier stage from an education perspective. The curriculum might have to start exposing people to AI early on. It could be something very simple, like the easiest touch point that a student can have is to start using ChatGPT to learn something, right? And then start understanding how, for a specific job, can I use other tools. You can always start with ChatGPT. I mean, there are people who don't have much of education, they are still using ChatGPT. So to start interfacing with AI is the first step. A lot of people know about AI, but if you ask, did you use any tools, that they don't use. So it's a mind shift change that needs to come. The government can definitely start having changes in the curriculum, which makes people start looking at this as one of the tools that they use, just like how they started doing that. Computer science is a part of the curriculum. If you go maybe 40 years back, that was not the case. So this has to become a part of the curriculum, getting people to understand that this is something that you need to learn, something you need to integrate with whatever learning you're doing. So I think that's where the policymakers can come in.
Okay, Avi, is Sid with us? No, I don't think he is.
No, I'm here.
Okay.
Can you- So now, I think the government can do a lot, right? The national strategy on artificial intelligence, when they came up with it in I think 2019, what was a fascinating document, right? I think they had laid out a really good plan on how they want to tackle this. I do think they need to refresh that, come with a different strategy, because the thing with technology and specifically artificial intelligence, it changes, not every few months, right? It seems to be changing every 24 hours. Something new is coming up. Even as we speak, I'm sure there's been some change in AI. So the government, I think, needs to be on top of it. It also needs to do, I'll say, two things. One is, how can it be used for governance, right? How can you say equip the government officials? How can you maybe even equip politicians for better governance, right? It could be as simple as managing a city. It could be as simple as understanding people who really need support and help. There are a lot of various ways in which AI can be used. So I think better governance and using AI tools, AI systems, using the data for it. They have access to a lot of the data. Would be step number one. Right. Step number two is, I think there needs to be a bit more awareness and education on AI. The positive implications, yes, but also to some extent on privacy. There was a very good question on privacy, right? I think a lot of our data is out there, and I feel some people unwillingly are also exposing a lot to some of these AI systems. So I think it's important that there are also good awareness that happens to the citizens in terms of what can be exposed and how their data is even getting used, right? And getting their consent before some of their data gets used, either for on their side or even before they give it to businesses. So by doing these two things would really help a lot, at least in the short run, in my opinion, Kalyan.
Okay. There's an interesting question from Karuna Bara. It's not directly related to job losses, but certainly, I mean, because AI does threaten. In fact, when the whole thing just burst onto the scene, the New York Times went, they sued AI for accessing their archives and used as training data. Now, one is often tempted, if you want to read a book, instead of reading the whole book, I am quite tempted to go to ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT, what does this book say? So that I don't have to read the whole book, and ChatGPT will give me an essence summary of whatever that book contains. I mean, I don't have to purchase the book, so many other things. So it sort of takes off from that. He or she is asking, what is the future of intellectual property rights? For creative industry animators and artists with AI and algorithms, polarity in terms of solutions in Indian society. I think I kind of get the drift of the question, but yes, go ahead. Does anyone want to answer?
I guess the answer lies in the legal sphere, right? But that said, and then at least in the US, Google has lost a couple of antitrust cases, right? So I guess it depends on the awareness also of the lawmaking fraternity as to how far how deep do they understand this, right? So I think there needs to be some awareness of that. I remember in one of my earlier roles, we did a session even for the lawyer and the judge fraternity on AI and what AI can do. But otherwise, I think this is a question which is very much evolving. I don't think there is a clear answer to that, because the legality of it again has to be decided by the courts. But again, I guess there is this push and pull definitely on this subject. I think the verdict is still out on this one. But I guess what we could do as individuals and as society is to maybe educate the lawmaking fraternity and the lawmakers themselves, including the legislators, on the use of AI, right, and the need of protecting the IP rights. I don't know how far we would be successful, but at least we should make an attempt in terms of driving awareness here.
Who can make these laws? By the way, I mean, who can tell AI that, hey, you cannot give a summary of the latest novel by Salman Rushdie or whoever? Who can make that law?
So there are already existing laws, Kalyan. So
Okay.
there are already existing laws on some of these. They're not necessarily in the tech field, right? But there are some. I won't talk about the DPDP law, the data privacy law, but there are other set of laws which actually deal with IP rights and whatnot. What needs to be done is they need to be refreshed within the context of AI, right? I think that's what needs to be done more. But from what I understand, there are already a set of laws. I think some harmonization needs to be made, and you need to specifically spell out that if AI is involved, this is what this is how the output should look, and this is what maybe the judgment would look like, right? But I think that discussion is still on. I don't think it's still done even within India.
Yes, I mean that's okay about books. Yes, but what about things that people create in terms of animation, which is what the questioner is asking.
I wouldn't have an answer on that.
Okay, it's still an evolving space.
Yeah.
I think it is. Yeah, I think there's quite a bit of a lot of areas which are still evolving. But I think it's a very important question. But at this point of time, I don't think we really have a proper way of coding.
Okay.
Yeah, Kalyan, just one point there. I just remembered it's actually the copyright law that deals with this. So there needs to be some update on the copyright law with respect to AI created, I would say, work, right? So that's
Yes.
really the law, and some discussion is happening, but I think we need to push the case further and ask for a very clear definition on this, so that the judges can actually make clear, informed judgments on this. So yeah, there is some work that needs to be done on the copyright law as we speak.
Yes, I mean in it should be a global thing, right? There should be some.
Yeah.
Maybe they're already working on it. Are you aware of any such thing?
No, as I said, there are some judgments which are still, pending even globally. You must have seen some of those cases even filed against OpenAI, for example. I think some of that will determine whether how India will react. But even within India, there has been a conversation about updating the copyright law. I think that's where maybe if we come up with a few suggestions and if we track, what's happening there, I think it would be helpful. But there is some movement in that direction, but it's still not done. The work is still not done.
Right. I mean, IP protection is related to jobs in a way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, some of this creator economy will definitely get affected.
Right. Okay, so we will. I think we'll end with this question. I don't quite understand what the questioner wants, but he seems to be looking at a very broad philosophical thing. We don't have a conscious AI yet. Well, what is consciousness? I am conscious, but am I very different from my AI? It seems to be much smarter than me. Anyway, so data development will parallel AI development, meaning a paucity in data lead on to unusable AI. In that case, do you think we in infancy, as far as AI is concerned, in at least, I don't quite understand. What is the question asking? This seems to be some philosophical thing going on here.
I can just bring up the question again.
Okay, yes. Can you flash that question? How do I do this? Ravina, are you there? Can you?
I can read the question set. So essentially the person is essentially asking if India is kind of poor with respect to the data sets, right? I think are we in a infancy in that sense? And I mean that's really where the question is kind of hinting at. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, one part of what the question is asking is data development with parallel AI development, meaning a paucity in data lead on to unstable AI. So this is one discussion that I was going through. Like, so how these AI, let's say Chat GPT. So it has a model behind it, which is, so model is basically something which has been fed a lot of data and it trains on the data, and on the basis of the data it answers your questions. Right? Now what's happening is, as we go forward, uh, now AI is beginning to spit out data, right? So we ingested a lot of data. Now it is spitting out a lot of data in a lot of forums. Answers are created by AI. Now what would happen is these data which are getting created by AI will get backfed into AI as it goes. So you get into that kind of a loop. So that speaks to the paucity of data. Like, you cannot, I mean, we don't have infinite data to feed to AI to make it super intelligent, and slowly it will start consuming its own data. So when that happens, we are doing data development with AI, and in parallel we are also developing AI. So that can lead to a lot of inaccuracy in answers, a lot of imaginative hallucinated answers. So we don't have conscious AI yet. Yes, I mean, that's where the human part actually comes in, the trickiest part to replicate in AI. But this is definitely a problem. How much data can you feed into AI to make it super conscious? Because it starts ingesting its own data after some time to make it aware. So that's where a lot of problems can come.
So, Kalyan, my take is a little different here. I believe it's the other way around. India does have a lot of data. Whether that data is usable or not depends on whether it's cleanly annotated, whether it's labeled, whether it's actually fit for consumption by the
Right.
models. Right? That's where
Right.
the work really needs to happen. And
Right.
I think a few steps have been taken, but we have to take some very giant steps there. Right? And as and
Right.
when that happens, back to Sid's point earlier, then you could really have maybe a farmer chatbot where a farmer could just uh, chat with the interface and ask, which crop should I actually sow in the winter, right? Which will get me the maximum return. I think that's when all these things will come together. But for that to happen, I think our data A needs to be at a single place, and B, we really need to have some annotation cleaning, and we need to then put it up in repositories, make it free for startups and the rest of the ecosystem to kind of offtake that, right? I think we still are in an infancy stage when it comes to that maturity process. But as and when we do that, I think we'll be probably one of the better countries which can benefit from this technology, right? Because we have a lot of population, we have a lot of problems to solve, and I think the data then becomes very useful. So I think that way I'm very optimistic that if we solve for the data, then we can really have AI help us, in our day-to-day lives. Kalyan.
Yes, that's the challenge of making Indian language LLMs, right? The annotating that part.
Yeah.
Yes. We will end with this one question because it seems to conclude our discussion. The bitter truth is not yet upon us, I suppose. Going by the what I hear from questioners, from people who are commenting, as well as the panelists. Although Kalyan would probably sort of disagree with that, but here's the question that in this came up before also, that the Jevons paradox that says that talks about this big fear of some technology leading to job losses, but leading to more jobs being created. When the engines were developed, when the cars got onto the roads, and people thought, okay, what's going to happen to these horses and all that? But then a new economy sort of came in very quickly. Is that the way things will move, or are we going to see a major um, disruption in terms of people getting employed and getting fired?
So I
I'd throw
would
it to
say at least the tech field will definitely have a Jevons paradox kind of a situation, where as some people are asking, how do I make myself irreplaceable in a tech sector? So the more the efficiency is, the more people will ask for it. Is basically what the Jevons paradox says. Like, you increase efficiency, people will start using it more. It's not like you'll start saving because the efficiency has increased. So businesses which never used tech, or which did not see a lot of usage in tech, will also start seeing usage in tech, because now you can generate outputs at a much lower cost, right? Like what DeepSeek did. So it reduced the cost of using an LLM by 95%. which enables a lot of businesses to start using it, because otherwise it's too costly for them to use it. So the more efficiency comes, there is going to be more usage of that particular technology, which means you require more people to help you to deliver on the top of the technology. So I would say I'm bullish on that, as far as at least tech is concerned, that there are going to be more jobs. It's just going to be different kind of jobs than what we have exactly now.
Yeah, I'll completely agree with George, right? I think that's what we're going to see. There's going to be greater efficiency, so higher profitability. Businesses will now reinvest that money, that lead to growth, that lead to more jobs. Right? The only question is how long the cycle is. Is it like a 2-year cycle, 5-year cycle, 10-year cycle before the 300 million jobs that are going to be displaced are going to lead to say 400 million jobs, right, in the future. So the only question is when this is going to happen, but I think it's definitely going to happen. And also on the jobs question, on this whole doomsday scenario where everybody will lose job, I don't think that's going to happen. I want to quote the American sociobiologist, right, Edward Wilson. What he said was, human emotions are like paleolithic, right? Our institutions and businesses are medieval, while technology is actually godlike, right? And that's one of the reasons we'll never be in a scenario where.
Okay, I think we lost Siddharth again. We will close, but I will give the last word to Kalyan. Two panelists, they don't agree. There's a bitter truth. There's a sweet truth, I suppose. What do you say?
I guess it's somewhere in between. I guess there are larger market forces at play. There is all this global tariffs that you're speaking about, geopolitical actors, at work. What I would say is it's not just about the technology itself, right? I think we have to look at it in the context of, do you have the capital for some of these, right? Like even for India, do we have the right capital? Can we get access to capital? I think those are bigger questions that we have to answer. Well, I guess, on the technology part, we all agree, AI is for the good. We can solve a lot of our societal problems, social equity issues. But I think the larger question we have to answer is, can we use AI, or can we use technology, or can we improve our labor productivity in a manner where we have a seat at the table and we can get more access to capital so that we can come back and solve some of our issues and still stand in this whole, I would say, insular world today, not so much of a global world, because that's what will define, whether to the questioner out there, whether we can have a prosperous nation, in the days to come, right? I think these are things that we also have to watch along with technology. Technology doesn't live in isolation. There are other things that we also got to keep a watch on, and that's exactly where AI and some of these other developments can come in. So I would say, again, we'll have to wait and watch, but we have to be more intentful about this transition, and we have to ensure that we skill ourselves as individuals, skill the society, and also take care of the demand, right? How do we generate demand within the country and outside? Kalyan.
Well, but I suppose that serves for a very good conclusion for this discussion. It was fascinating. I learned much. I hope all those who were here and who will watch it later too have learned a lot and have answered some of their questions. Thanks to all the panelists for being with us, and those who watched this discussion and asked those very insightful questions. Thank you, and until next Saturday when we will see you in another webinar from the Hindu. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.